One thing that Tim said in his remarks, which was particularly on point, and it's worth talking about, Mark, and everyone watching here at the Voice of College Football. And he mentioned, what Deuce Robinson can become within Lincoln Riley's system. So, in other words, you're not just talking about the raw material that Deuce Robinson himself possesses, which is considerable by itself, but you have someone who can mold him. You have someone who can work him into a scheme, into a series of play calls, packages that can really maximize his potential. And I mention this because, and touching on what we've been talking about with recruiting and the value of certain positions versus others, when we talk about the need for USC to win, the high profile recruiting battles on the defensive side of the ball, and that those things really do matter more than offense, it plays into this reality that, like, Alex Grinch's ability to develop defensive players is nowhere near Lincoln Riley's ability to develop offensive players. Like, these aren't just two different zip codes. These are two different continents in terms of proven player development. And so for that reason, like, USC just cannot give Alex Grinch enough depth. There's no such thing as having too much depth for Alex Grinch on that side of the ball at USC. And really, when you get down to the nitty gritty, in terms of like the central thing that's going to affect the trajectory and the ultimate outcome of USC's season. I mean, we can talk about players, Bear Alexander, Anthony Lucas, Damani Jackson, Mason Cobb, Shane Lee, Romello Height. I mean, you can go on and on and on. You can talk about like the injured players who weren't available last year and are coming back this year. You can talk about the transfer portal. You can talk about recruits such as Tackett Curtis. You can talk on and on and on about, how well players are going to perform, but really underline that. What are we really talking about? We are talking about as the number one key to USC's whole season. I mean, if we just assume that, Caleb Williams is going to be healthy, all right, we can just assume that one thing. What's really the number one key? Number one out of everything in terms of creating the outcomes that USC fans want, like having a top 50, top 40 defense. You pair that with what's going to be a number one, number two offense. But what feeds into the right outcomes for USC? The ultimate answer, the central answer, like getting to the core of the core, is Alex Grinch's player development on defense. That's it. Like, I mean, we can talk about the schematic moves and adjustments that Alex Grinch is going to make. We can talk about, how he handles the depth chart and the rotations of players, given that, USC is going to be playing 9 straight weeks 4 through 12. We've talked about that. We've talked about a lot of different things. And so because we've talked about so many different things in the offseason, an offseason which is now, basically a month and a half away from being over, and we finally get to tee it up and actually see this team on the field in late August. We've talked about so many things that it's easy to just get distracted by each shiny little object, each talking point, right? And you can't care about everything equally. I said that earlier. If you want to care about something more than anything else, and if you want to look at a factor that's going to have just about more weight than anything else in influencing this 2023 season for USC, it is Alex Grinch's player development. You could also say it's Dante Williams' player development in the secondary in terms of, he's a recruiting stud. He's a recruiting monster. We know that. Can the coaching match the recruiting? Can the player development match the player acquisition that we've seen at USC? So Tim Prengley's point about Deuce Robinson within Lincoln Riley's offense, like, you can be confident that Deuce Robinson's going to be a great player, not just because he's super talented and versatile, but because you have a proven developer of skill position talent guiding him through the whole process. And you have an elite quarterback who's going to make him look good as well. And you don't have those same kinds of presences, those same kinds of pillars, proven pillars on the defensive side of the ball for USC. So that's what magnifies this whole conversation about needing to get more defensive players, needing to win more recruiting battles on defense. It all plays into some larger realities that people need to be aware of and need to be reminded of at USC.
You have to wonder if there was hesitancy on Lincoln Riley's part when he brought Alex Grinch with him. We'll never know. But
Mm.
of course, he had him there as defensive coordinator for, I believe, starting the 20, I don't remember if it was 18 or 19 season.
Well, Mike Stoops got fired midway through 18. So Grinch's
Okay.
first full season was 19.
Okay. 19, 20, 21, 3 seasons at Oklahoma and 3 marginal, to be kind, lackluster level defenses.
And we talked earlier about Tom Allen in Indiana. Like, their one really good year was the pandemic year. Alex Grinch's one really good year was the pandemic year, 2020. So like that's a good reminder there in terms of that larger context.
Yeah, I guess I didn't fill in with my comments on both Mel Tucker and Tom Allen, but I'm right there with you in regards to those were the first two that came to mind in that order. And the Mel Tucker hangup is going to be the contract, I would think, maybe just a little bit too rich for Michigan State to pay him off, to buy him out after just a second year after the first big season, the 11-2 top 10 finish, Peach Bowl victory team, and then most of those 11 wins went to the NFL draft in the form of Kenneth Walker Jr. or the third. And, a transfer portal laden team that was just kind of built for one season and really wasn't, they were a good team, not an 11-2 team. Ohio State was beating them 49-0 at halftime. So, there was a little smoke and mirrors there to kind of get them through that season. And like you said, we've seen this from a number of athletic directors thinking, okay, do I want to keep and hang on to this commodity and overpay and overextend possibly to just ensure the future? Man, but they overpaid for him leaving Colorado, coming to Michigan State.
That's right.
Based on 5-7 and not having a head coaching resume. They overpaid for him. So I think that they were safe and they overreached and didn't need to, is my thought.
Absolutely. So it's not as though the extension was the first time that Michigan State really overplayed its hand. Absolutely. Totally
They're in a
agree.
tough spot in this conference, and it's only going to get tougher with the additions coming in 2024, where there is a level of expectation. Mark D'Antonio has delivered. They have their high points throughout their history. It can be done there, but it's difficult. And it's very much at its best under Mark D'Antonio as a lunch pail kind of program that would be able to maximize their resources and go toe to toe with Ohio State in particular and come out with some big victories at times. And so it can be done, but it's a very interesting checkered kind of program in regards to results, and going up against Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State obviously doesn't work out for them most of the time, but still there is a level of expectation that they should win there, and they see themselves as being a major player in the Big Ten.
Absolutely.